there's a lot of us. Oh, okay. Myself. No, you just grab a spot. Everybody has to be equal. Yeah, equal for them. Would you take your nameplate and grab a spot? There are waters and some snacks up there.
Within these chairs or?
Yes, out here. Like a water? I can bring you one. What did you say?
I said I was gonna bring one, I forgot it.
Oh, well. Oh, you guys speaking to the outside voices.
Hey, Darcy, how you doing? Cool.
Yes, yeah.
Busy.
Yeah.
They finally decided to get me off.
Thank
the-
you.
There you go. You're welcome.
Yeah, that training curve is, it's like twice as long. But in the long run, it's gotta be,
Oh, yeah. Well, they made me a principal this year, so now I'm dealing with like corporate, like, how are we gonna spend our money? Yeah, try to be.
I know that we sent out PDF copies of the budget book. Does anyone need a paper copy of the budget book? There you go.
Yeah.
Here you go. You have a budget book.
I do not.
Snacks up there. Water.
Yeah.
This. And my wallet.
Oh, now everybody's gone.
Anything else?
Not good. Oh, integrity. Thank you. There's waters and snacks up there. Here's some. For you.
Amazing. So adorable. Wherever you like. Does anyone need a budget book? You can go home tonight. Or if you'd like something. Have your name plate, please.
For you. Good, how are you? See you twice in 1 month. Yeah. Heard a few times, I was in that meeting. You were on that, you were calling from the airport or something. Oh, oh, that's right. Guess that was last month. Yeah, that was not my most effective meeting.
Been a while.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Agency Budget Committee meeting to order on April 11th, 2023. Paula, would you do the roll call, please?
Joe Barcott. No. Stacy Coburn. Here. First, Eric Malik. Deborah Ferrer. Andy Hagrel, we're doing the roll.
Here.
Scott Hagee.
Here.
Ann Lewis.
Here.
Darcy Long. McLaughlin. Dean Meyerson. Doug Nelson.
Here.
David Peters.
Here.
Ellen Potter. Ken Richardson is absent. Shannon Saldivar. Here. Leon Serber.
Here.
And Ben Ring.
You'll all please stand and. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, since this is a budget committee meeting, we need to elect both a chair and a secretary. The duties of the chair, just to run this meeting. The duties of the secretary are just to sign the minutes. Paula will actually take the minutes. So at this point, we'll start with the easy one. I'll take a nomination, it can be a self-nomination or otherwise for secretary. So Leanne Lewis has self-nominated. Are there any other nominations? All in favor of Leanne as the secretary, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Voting, Leanne? Voting?
Oh, I
And
didn't know I could vote myself.
Sandy, did you vote? Ferrer?
Sorry, yes, aye.
Me too.
Okay. Shannon Saldivar has been nominated to chair the budget committee meeting. Are there any other nominations? All in favor of Shannon as the chair of the budget committee meeting, please say aye.
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 I'll abstain.
See?
Sure, if that would be most appropriate, happy to.
If everyone is quick reminder, you need to speak into the microphone and use your outdoor voice.
Oh, yeah, forgot about that. Hey, we like to spread the leadership around.
Thank you. So, budget message for fiscal year 2023.
Great, thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Joshua Chandler, Community Development Director and Agency Manager. And in front of us, this budget message that we have is really kind of an introduction to our budget packet. The agency is set to expire in 2029. So this is, we have 6 years of a kind of a final push. And, the goals that we have in front of us are really to hone in and make sure that we are, operating the best we can and giving as much funding out and appreciating values that we have in our agency, in our area boundary before we retire. Some bullet points here that I'll go over in more detail further on in the report. This year we have an economic development officer that's been created in the community development department's budget, and that economic development officer is going to assist the manager, myself,
with the agency. So at upcoming agency meetings, it will be the EDL will assist in a lot of the projects going forward. I highlighted some of the main projects for this next year. The projects that really have been, kind of the focal point of what we've done this last year and what we see in this next year going forward. We have a new incentive program. I'll touch on that some more coming up. The recreation building is a building that we've all seen just transform over the last few years. So it's really exciting. They have a new finishing up the last storefront, the last of 3. So that is going to be completed this next fiscal year. Then we will be returning another property onto the tax rolls. I'll touch some more on the Tony's building as well as the First Street project. And then kind of jumping into where we're at, I would like to introduce the brains of the operation, our finance director, Angie Wilson, and extend a shout out to her and her team really on this new budget format. I think this new budget format looks great. They did a great job on it. It's a long awaited update, and I think it kind of brings our budgets out of the dark ages. So thank you, Angie. I'll give you a little breakdown of our presentation. I will be going over kind of an overview of urban renewal, talking about the funds of urban renewal, goals, accomplishments, and major issues to be addressed. Angie will walk us through information regarding the debt services fund. And then I will touch on kind of bring us home with the capital projects fund and talk about some of these bigger projects that I just barely scraped the surface on here. So the mission statement of the urban renewal, the mission is to eliminate blight and depreciating property values within the agency's jurisdiction, and in the process, attract aesthetically pleasing, job producing, private investments that will stabilize or increase property values, protect the area's historic places and values. So urban renewal is a financing program that's authorized by Oregon statute, and it allows for the use of property tax to facilitate economic growth in a designated area. This financing mechanism is implemented locally and works by dedicating future property tax growth to pay for redevelopment projects. So these redevelopment projects generate new taxable value that otherwise wouldn't have existed without this public investment. The new taxable value is released to the general tax rolls after the urban renewal then sunsets, which, as I mentioned, would be 2029. Locally, the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency administers the program for funding the goals and objectives of the Urban Renewal Plan. The Urban Renewal Plan was adopted in August 1990 by general ordinance and includes 14 goals and objectives, which provide the overall guidance in developing this program. The agency board consists of 9 members, 3 city councilors, 2 citizens, and 1 member from each of the governing boards, Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue, Parks and Rec, Port of the Dalles, and Wasco County. The community development director is the manager of the agency and has considerable amount of staff support from the community development secretary, city attorney, finance director, and soon to be economic development officer. The agency has, looking at funding, the agency has 2 separate funds. There is the debt services fund, which is accounts for tax increment revenue and repayment of debt obligations are issued to fund agency projects. Angie will be providing some more information on that shortly. Then there's the capital projects fund, which accounts for administration and project implementation, and I'll touch on some more of that coming up. The beginning balance for the 23-24 fiscal year is a little more than $5.4 million. This number is our best estimate at the time. And unlike the city's budget, an urban renewal budget is meant to be spent completely. Urban renewal revenues consist of property taxes and interest income with a combined total of $1.7 million. The agency contracts with the city for staffing, as well as contracts with outside experts, financial consultants, engineers, and attorneys specializing in urban renewal law. The total contract cost for this next year is budgeted at a little over $180,000, and that's budgeted in the capital projects fund. Total debt obligations that are outstanding for the agency as of July 1st are approximately a little over $4 million. And this is the remaining balance of a $10.2 million bond that was issued in 2009 by the city and the agency. If paid in accordance with the debt repayment schedule, as mentioned earlier, the outstanding debt will be paid in full January 30th, 2029. So next I'd like to go into, some goals, accomplishments, and issues to be resolved in the coming years. And there's a complete list of these on pages 5 and 6, but I'm just going to touch on a few of them. Some of the goals for this next fiscal year: fund and provide input into the engineering services agreement for street project. Fund the demolition and hazardous material abatement of the Tony's building. Continue to promote the urban renewal incentive program, and sell the third and final agency owned storefront of the recreation building development. Some accomplishments from this last year: we oversaw the adoption of the incentive program. We reorganized the direction of the First Street project. We terminated an agreement with our longstanding agreement with ODOT. And in doing so, we entered into another contract with a consulting firm. And in doing so, we ended up saving the agency time and money overall. And one note that we will need to make on here for the final budget is we need to cross out that we secured funding through a brownfield grant. This was a last minute pull. You may have heard me at a past meeting. I'd still say it was an accomplishment for the amount of time that staff put into trying to secure this funding. Only last minute, the funding was kind of pulled out from underneath us. So still a highlight in a way for the staff time put into it, but unfortunately we were unable to secure that funding in the end. At the end, it would be great. Thank you. And then major issues to be resolved over the next 5 years: complete strategic planning to help future investments, project, and activities until 2029 to see it all the way through. Promote redevelopment by awarding grants for different projects around town, and complete the First Street project. And then to touch on the debt services fund, which is on pages 10 through 12. Angie's gonna give us a breakdown on that.
Good evening. If you turn to page 10 of the book, you'll see it is the debt service fund. Just in short, we kind of did the budget book this year. So if you're looking on 2021, 21, 22, you'll see those are the actuals, what we budgeted for 22, 23, and then what our proposed budget is on the right-hand side. The urban renewal debt service fund is used for just paying the debt. We always budget for an extra payment for the next year payment, just due to the fact that the capital project fund, there is no ending fund balance or contingency in that fund, so that money can be completely spent. This just makes sure that there's a payment for the next year before the property tax revenue comes in, so it's secure. And if you look on page 12, you will see the table kind of in the italic black area is this next year's payment for 23, 24. And after we make that payment, we will have 5 payments left on that. So I think that's it on the debt service fund.
Great, thank you. And so next we'll look at the capital projects fund, which is pages 7 and 8. And I just want to go over first some of these major projects that I brought up in the beginning. So we have a new grant program, the incentive program. And this is something we created over this last year, and we're still fine tuning a little bit, and you'll find out more at our meeting next week regarding that. We have budgeted, so there are multiple projects in town that have, developers that have come to us with interest for some pretty large projects. So we have budgeted a little over $2.5 million to see to be able to assist in those projects. Like I said, this is really just something that, development is always, we never really know when development's going to happen. There's always just so many different things that play into it. So this gives us the flexibility to be able to fund those projects. The Tony's building, as I mentioned earlier, really after an extended period of research and preparation from 2021, we will be demolishing the Tony's building and abating the hazardous material that's in there. A lot of asbestos throughout that building. We have an invitation to bid currently posted on the city's website and in the Daily Journal of Commerce. I have spoke to a couple contractors. There is some interest to do the work. We have for that the overall cost of demolition and abatement is $750,000. So that is also budgeted. And then the First Street project has been a project since 2008. The agency was awarded some federal funding back in 2008, and there's been a lot of delays and changing for various different reasons, changing of the scope. And just in this last year, we mutually terminated the agreement that we had with ODOT on the project. Both sides, it was really just going to save us some time and money, as I touched on earlier. Overall, the termination resulted in the cost savings of $940,000. And also in doing that, ODOT, their team approved an exception for the repayment of the federal funds that we'd already spent. So we actually don't have to pay $320,000 back. So overall, it was a win-win. And we did enter into a contract, a new engineering services agreement with our consultant, our design consultant from the very beginning, KPFF Consulting Engineers. So we kicked off a new, basically we're in a process now of finalizing design and construction. It's a long process. It takes about 2 years to go through all of it, coordinating with the railroad, coordinating with, different right-of-way agreements. So that actually kicked off in the first part of March. So that's well underway. And then I wanted to, those are kind of our bigger projects. And then just wanted to touch on pages 7 and 8, as I mentioned. I'm not going to go through every single line item here, but I did want to touch on those that you may be looking at from last year's budget to this year's budget of having more significant change. And so looking at a couple, there's 3 line items here: contractual services, urban renewal, consultants, and then property liability insurance. All those have decreased from the previous year. Urban renewal consultants significantly for the fact that we had 2 project managers contracted last year, which we will not have this year. So it decreased from 126,000 in the previous year to 52,000 this year. And then contractual services, basically the legal services that were provided in that line item last year have been moved into the consulting line item. And then property and liability insurance, we got rid of 2 properties through the transfer with the recreation building development. So there was a decrease there. And then an increase is our property rehab. This is the incentive program that I talked about earlier. This is really, we're setting a really high ceiling for this in the event that these projects come and happen. And then the other one, taking a look at buildings and grounds, and this is a jump from 5,000 to 20,000. And this is really just, when I came on as director, I kind of looked down at our First Street parking lots. They're pretty beat up, and some of our agency-owned properties have just a little bit run down. So this is just some money that may not be spent entirely, but it gives us some flexibility to improve the properties that we have. And with that, I'm I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Have one, Doug Nelson. So reading the narrative, it sounded like the Tony's building was going to be put off to the 24-25 fiscal year. You're saying, though, this is in the 23-24 fiscal year now. So it will be in the next 12 months.
Correct. Yep.
The narrative led me to, you kept saying next year, and next year was undetermined. So,
Oh, my apologies. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Turn this on. It's on. So what are the actual dates for the fiscal year start and end? Is it calendar year?
July 1st is when it starts to June 30th.
So we're approving the budget for what starts in July?
Yep.
Okay. Is the Greenway, is that just the past year or is that ongoing?
So the Greenway is it's money that the agency set aside for when that project happens. And in the most recent conversation at an agency meeting, I believe it's been pushed off maybe 10 years. So this is really the agency's full commitment to the project, like we originally said, but keeping it in the budget every year in the event that it can be completed
Just
sooner.
reserving the funds. for-
Exactly.
Yeah, we agreed as part of their grant application to provide the match of that. So we're holding it out for when they start spending their project, we can do the match. And I think that with the new timeline, we might consider when we go through our project list again, which is coming up later, we might consider talking with Parks and Rec if there's something else we can do that's not 8 to 10 years away. Because urban renewal should sunset before then. So we
Exactly.
need to think about that.
Yep.
Plus, our community doesn't necessarily want to wait 8 to 10 years for that project.
Right.
I know this isn't, this is Debbie Ferrer. I know this is not really related to the budget, but has it been delayed 8 to 10 years? Or 10 years?
So on behalf of the agency, I can't speak on that. I don't know if our board member could speak on that.
We haven't really discussed in detail everything recently, but from my understanding, it is that ODOT is not able to do this project in the foreseeable future. And since we're partnered with them, we don't really have any other way to get it done. It's something worth discussing in the future, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, and on that point, I think the ODOT's timelines, I think it kind of parallels with our First Street project as well. Our First Street project, we were given a timeline, pretty extended timeline to get that project completed. And that's what I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, that we were able to terminate our contract with ODOT and have the ability to finish the project sooner. So I think it has been a holdup on some ODOT projects around the state.
Sorry. The project managers, the funding for the project managers that was reduced from last year, is that just because they're not needed, or it's like going back to staff, city staff or something like that?
Both, really, both of them. One of them was a project manager that guided us through the kind of the termination project with ODOT, and at that time there was, quite a bit of staff changing going on in our department. So that was one of them. And the other one was a consultant that we hired for putting together our incentive program. So once the program was completed, we had no use for them anymore.
And do you think what's sort of the plan behind the allocation for the First Street parking lot? Are we talking about line painting or something like that? Because it doesn't seem like a lot of necessarily enough.
It'd be a lot of line painting. It'd be, curb stops, minor things. With the First Street project going to be complete in the next, construction will set to begin probably in about 2.5 years, I would imagine. There's going to be a considerable amount of work impacting that parking lot. So this is really a kind of a Band-Aid for a little while. I mean, we just, we hired a fencing contractor that they completed. They put up a new black chain link fence along there just about 2 weeks ago to replace some of the old like 2x4 planks that were falling apart. So just clean that up a little bit, and thankfully we got it done in time for Cherry Fest. But yeah, just very little, and then just a couple other sprucing up of our properties.
So, didn't you also tell me that you added lighting, which was one of the main security concerns for people working downtown?
Yes,
I thought that
lighting.
was very good.
Yep, lighting has as well. Yeah, there's some lighting that was added. There was some, some trees. I think there's some tree of heaven down there that was removed. Yeah, really just a lot of sprucing up. I think there's just some potholes that we need to fill. I mean, it's really as it sits. I mean, people do use the parking lot, but as it sits, I mean, it could be used a bit more efficiently. Add more downtown parking in a relatively inexpensive way.
I have a question on the Tony building. Once that demolition is completed, is there interested parties in developing that at this point?
There have been some mentioned. I think when we talk to larger developers, there's always this, we would be interested in that type of thing. But nothing set in stone at this time. And I do think once the building's down and it's shovel ready, there'll be a lot more interest. And we will open up, after the building comes down, we will then go into an RFP process to try to find a new use for the site. And I know that the agency has mentioned, interest multiple times in the past. They would like to see a mixed use development there, commercial on the bottom, residence on the top. So that's going to be the aim of the agency to, when proposals come in, that's what we'll be looking for ultimately.
A significant commitment to tearing it down and have it just sit there, or demolish it and have it just sit there. And I'm just concerned if you have hopefully in the short term, there'll be some interest in it.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully. It's I do know when there is another developer in town who has another project in the works, and before that project's even finished, she's mentioned interest in this lot as well. I mean, and I think you have to look at it. It's a relatively good sized lot in downtown. So there should be quite a bit of interest in it, I can imagine.
Sorry. Josh, can you explain also about why it doesn't, if we tear the building down now, it doesn't count toward the total project money that comes from the government, and how that triggers prevailing wage? And because that's a factor in why we want to tear it down now rather than wait till we have somebody.
Correct. Yeah. So Boley, the state of Oregon, has a requirement for how much money a public agency can give towards a private project. And when you go over a $750,000 threshold, it triggers prevailing wage. And prevailing wage, we knew there was a development there some interest in a couple years ago on developing the property. Prevailing wage was really, the Boley determination was really the thing that made it so it wasn't going to pencil for that development. So by the ability for the agency to incur those costs, we're able to sell it shovel ready, and then that additional money doesn't go against any Boley determination. Yeah, great questions. So due to the fact that it is such an old building, the history of the building is that it existed before the 1891 fire, and it took it all the way down to the ground, and then they built on top of it, and then it went through significant changes to the point where it's not necessarily considered a historic structure, but it is old enough, 75 years or older, requires an archaeological dig. And really what that's going to be is it's going to, I believe it's a, they'll take the building all the way down. They will get into the basement crawl space area, and they'll dig two holes essentially. I think they're 1 meter cube holes. And in there, if there's significant artifacts that are found, they will coordinate with SHPO to determine what else needs to be done. As far as the invitation to bid, the RFP or invitation to bid, that was posted on March 31st. We have our a mandatory site visit for anyone interested will happen next Tuesday. And then bids will close May 16th. So we're hoping to issue the contract at our June, what would be our June urban renewal meeting. I think it's June 20th. That's for the whole thing. Yeah, it's a whole package, kind of looking for a package deal on it. Yep.
Any other questions or public? Like, discuss this matter or something to think about it before we vote. Anybody who feels ready to move this to a vote? Raise your hand. Perfect. I would like to entertain a motion to 2023.
I'll second.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I was not able to hear the motion.
Same here.
I didn't hear anything.
Mm-mm.
First question was whether or not anybody would like to potentially set another meeting to discuss this matter.
Oh,
And then
okay.
the second one is if folks are then ready to potentially move this to a motion for approval. And then there was a motion made by Dean and a second by Stacy, and then discussion. We can back that up if either of you feel different than what we just went through.
Was there any discussion?
There was no discussion. No.
Okay. I'm fine with it then. It's fine.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. One more time. Thank you. A little unorthodox, sorry.
That's okay.
Next time I'll turn my microphone on and that'll make things a little easier. All right. I think that's everything. And nothing else on the agenda that I can see. Thank you for the presentation. I hadn't seen previous year's budget. My first one there, but it was better one. Obviously, did a great job as
Can't hear anything.
Been a hair.
Oh, I was saying that I hadn't been in other budget committee meetings, so I don't know what previous budget proposals looked like, but this must have been wonderful since got done in 30 minutes and everything was laid out wonderfully and great narrative and wonderful work by the agency staff. So, all right. Well, I think meeting adjourned.
Yeah, good job.
That was real good.
Manager.
Thank you. Good night.